There is a reason your eyes stopped here. Not a random pause. Not a casual scroll. Not some empty coincidence lost in the noise of your day. No, this was a divine interruption. Archangel Michael stands in the unseen realm, and he does not whisper without purpose. He does not interrupt without urgency. And he does not call your attention unless something in your life has reached a critical spiritual turning point. And today, June 30, 2026, is not just another date passing quietly on a calendar. It is a marked moment, a line drawn in the spirit, a shift that has already begun whether you feel ready for it or not. You may have felt it before you even heard these words. That strange stillness, that unexpected emotional release, a sudden distance from someone you once couldn't imagine living without. That quiet question rising in your spirit, why does it feel different now? This is why. Because something has ended and something else has already begun. Archangel Michael speaks with clarity now. You were not rejected. You were removed. Let that settle in your spirit. You were not abandoned. You were non-discarded. You were not too much or not enough. You were divinely extracted from a connection that could no longer carry the light you were assigned to walk in. And here is the part that will shift everything for you. The one who hurt you, the one who drained you, the one who walked away or forced distance has just realized something. But you didn't come here to understand them. You came here because heaven needs you to understand you. Because while you've been trying to make sense of what happened, while you've replayed conversations, questioned your worth, and wondered if you could have done more, the spiritual realm has been rearranging everything behind the scenes. What felt like confusion was actually protection. What felt like loss was actually alignment. What felt like silence was actually strategy. And now, on this exact day, something in the spirit is being revealed to you because you are finally in a position to receive it without going back. Yes, without going back. Because if this message had reached you earlier, you might have still answered their call. You might have still explained yourself. You might have still tried to fix what heaven already decided to remove. But not now. Now you feel different. Now your spirit hesitates where it used to chase. Now your energy pulls back where it once poured endlessly. That is not bitterness. That is not pride. That is discernment awakening inside of you. Archangel Michael is not just observing this moment. He is announcing it. The cycle has been broken. The attachment has been severed. And what once had access to your light no longer does. Pause and think about that. Someone once had access to your energy, your kindness, your patience, your love, and they treated it as if it were replaceable. But heaven never saw it that way. Heaven saw you as a source of light, a carrier of favor, a vessel of peace, a presence that shifted atmospheres. And when that light was mishandled, when that favor was taken for granted, when that presence was drained instead of honored, heaven stepped in. Not loudly, not dramatically, but decisively. And that's why everything changed. That's why conversation stopped making sense. That's why the connection began to feel heavy. That's why your spirit started pulling away even when your heart was still trying to hold on. Because deep down you were being moved. And now you are here. Right at the edge of understanding. Right at the doorway of revelation. Because what you are about to realize next will explain why they are thinking about you again and why their realization came too late. This is not the beginning of your story. This is the moment you finally see it clearly. And once you see it, you will never be able to unsee it. Type ISE clearly now in the comments if this message is reaching your spirit. Blessing code 3030 is now activating clarity, protection, and divine separation in your life. Something inside you has already changed and you didn't even notice the exact moment it happened. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. There was no announcement, no clear-cut ending, no final scene where everything made sense. It was quiet, subtle, almost invisible to the outside world, but in the spirit it was undeniable. Archangel Michael speaks again, not to inform you of what is coming, but to reveal what has already taken place. You are not who you were when they last held access to you. Let that truth sit with you for a moment. Because you've been measuring your growth by what you feel when heaven has been measuring it by what you no longer tolerate. There was a time when you would have chased clarity. A time when silence from them would have made you restless. A time when you would have questioned yourself just to keep the connection alive. What now? Now something feels different. Now when you think about going back, there is a resistance in your spirit. Now when you imagine reconnecting, there is a heaviness instead of excitement. And now when their name crosses your mind, it no longer carries the same emotional weight. And you've been wondering why. You've asked yourself, did I just move on or did something deeper happen? This is your answer. You didn't just move on. You were transformed. Because what broke between you was not just a relationship, it was a spiritual contract that no longer aligned with who you are becoming. And when that contract expired, heaven did not ask for your permission to end it. Heaven enforced the separation. That's why things started to feel unnatural before they ended. That's why conversations began to feel forced. That's why your energy started pulling away even when your heart was still trying to hold on. You were evolving and they were not. Archangel Michael reveals it clearly. You outgrew the version of yourself that tolerated them. This is where many misunderstand what has happened. You think you lost something valuable. You think you were left behind. You think they walked away with something you couldn't replace. But the truth is far more powerful than that. You didn't lose alignment. They lost access. Because the version of you they knew, the one who overgave, over-explained, overextended, no longer exists. Then grin of you served a purpose and taught you compassion. It stretched your patience. It revealed your capacity to love deeply. But it was never meant to be permanent. And now, that version has been laid to rest. That is why you cannot go back even if part of you tries to remember what it felt like. Because your spirit has already crossed a threshold that your emotions are still catching up to. Have you noticed how certain things don't affect you the same way anymore? The things that once triggered you now barely move you. The words that once hurt you now sound empty. The absence that once felt unbearable now feels like peace. That is not coincidence. That is elevation. You have been lifted out of a cycle that once felt normal to you. A cycle of emotional exhaustion. A cycle of giving without receiving. A cycle of hoping someone would finally see your worth. But here is the truth that Archangel Michael needs you to understand right now. They could not recognize your worth because they were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. Read that again in your spirit. They were comfortable not because everything was good, but because everything was convenient for them. Your silence made things easy. Your patience made things easy. Your forgiveness made things easy. But your growth disrupted everything. Because the moment you started pulling your energy back, the moment you stopped over-explaining, the moment you chose peace over proving your value, the dynamic collapsed. Not because you did something wrong, but because you finally did something right. And now, you are standing in a space that feels unfamiliar but sacred. A space where you are no longer pouring into what drains you. A space where your presence is no longer available to be taken for granted. A space where your energy is being preserved instead of consumed. This is your new identity. Not the one they remember. Not the one they expect. But the one heaven hath been shaping in silence. And this is why what is happening next is so important. Because while you have been transforming, while you have been detaching, while you have been stepping into clarities, they have been waking up to the absence of your light. And they are just now realizing what you have already outgrown. Type "I have changed" in the comments if you feel this shift within you. Blessing code 4242 is now activating your elevation, boundaries, and divine identity. There is something happening right now behind the scenes within the very person who once treated your presence as ordinary. They are thinking about you. Not casually. Not briefly. Not in passing. And this is not because you reached out. This is not because you tried to remind them of your value. This is not because you fought to stay in their life. No, this realization is happening without your involvement. Archangel Michael speaks with precision in this moment. The silence you chose has become the mirror they cannot escape. Understand what that means. When you were present, your light covered many things. Your patience softened their behavior. Your understanding excused their patterns. Your love absorbed the impact of their actions. But now there is no buffer. Now there is no one translating their behavior into something acceptable. Now there is no one offering them emotional safety while they continue to take without giving. And for the first time they are left alone with the truth of who they were in your presence. This is the awakening. It does not come with peace. It does not come with clarity at first. It comes with discomfort. Because they are starting to feel something they avoided for a long time, the absence of your energy. And your energy was never ordinary. You thought you were just being kind. You thought you were just being patient. You thought you were just trying to make things work. But what you were actually carrying was light. Light that stabilized them. Light that gave them emotional grounding. Light that allowed them to function without fully confronting themselves. And now that light is gone, Archangel Michael reveals it clearly. They are not missing you the way you think. They are missing what you carried. Let that settle deeply within you. Because this is where confusion can try to pull you backward. You may start to feel their energy again. You may sense them thinking about you. You may even receive signs, memories, or emotional echoes that make it feel like something is pulling you back toward them. But this is not love returning. This is realization forming on their end. They are beginning to understand that what they lost cannot be easily replaced. Because they have tried. Yes, they have tried to fill the space you left with distractions, with new connections, with temporary attention, with people who seem easier to manage. But none of it feels the same. None of it carries the same depth. None of it provides the same sense of control mixed with comfort. Because what you brought into their life was not surface level. It was spiritual supply. And now they are feeling the withdrawal. Have you ever noticed how something only becomes valuable to someone after it is gone? This is that moment, but on a much deeper level. Because what they are realizing is not just that you were good to them. They are realizing that you were the source of a kind of peace they did not know how to create on their own. And that realization is heavy. It is unsettling. It forces them to reflect in ways they avoided when you were still there. They are replaying moments now. Moments where you showed up for them. Moments where you gave more than you received. Moments where they dismissed you, ignored you, or took advantage of your presence. And now those same moments are returning, but with a different perspective. Now they see what you were actually offering. Now they see what they disrupted. Now they see what they lost. But here is the part you must not miss. Archangel Michael speaks firmly here. Awareness does not equal transformation. Just because they see it now does not mean they have changed. Just because they feel the loss does not mean They are capable of honoring what they lost. Just because they recognize your value does not mean they are ready to meet you at your level. This is where many fall into the trap. Because when someone finally realizes, it can feel like the beginning of something new. It can feel like closure. It can feel like validation. It can feel like an opportunity to finally receive what you were once giving. But you must remember this. Their realization is happening because you left, not because they grew. And that changes everything. Because if you return too quickly, if you respond before the lesson is complete, if you make your light available again before they have done the internal work, the cycle will repeat. Not because you are weak, but because they are still the same. You must stay grounded in what has already been revealed to you. You must remember how it felt when your energy was being drained. You must remember the confusion, the imbalance, the emotional weight you carried. Because their current awareness does not erase their past patterns. And this moment right now is not about them reclaiming access to you. It is about you recognizing that you were never the one who needed them to realize anything. You were always the one who needed to walk away. And now that you have, they are finally seeing what you were. But by the time they fully understand it, you will already be standing in a space where you no longer need them to. Type the SEIT now in the comments if this message resonates with your spirit. Blessing code 5151 is now activating truth, detachment, and divine clarity in your life. And as this truth settles into your spirit, understand this. Every revelation you receive is not just for you, but for countless others who are still trapped in cycles they cannot yet see. When you sow into this message through Super Thanks or PayPal, you are not supporting a channel. You are releasing light into someone else's darkness. The word declares, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days." And this is that moment where your giving becomes a ripple of awakening across souls. I feel led to say this clearly. Your hand is not just giving, your spirit is responding. Do not delay what heaven is prompting. The links are already placed for you in the description and through the QR code. Step into obedience now. As you release, so shall it return, pressed down, shaken together, and running over into your life. You have asked yourself this question more than once, even if you never said it out loud. Why you? Why did this connection feel so intense, so consuming, so difficult to break away from? Why did it feel like you were constantly giving more, understanding more, carrying more while receiving less than what your spirit knew you deserved? This was never random. Archangel Michael steps forward with a truth that many avoid, but you are now ready to receive. You were not chosen by them by accident. You were recognized for something they could not create on their own. There was something about your presence that drew them in from the very beginning. It wasn't just your personality. It wasn't just your kindness. It wasn't just the way you communicated or showed up. It was your light. A light that made them feel stable. A light that made them feel seen. A light that gave them access to a kind of emotional and spiritual grounding they did not naturally carry within themselves. And at first it felt like connection. It felt like understanding. It felt like depth. It felt like you had finally found someone who got you. But what you didn't see then, what you could not fully understand yet, was that this connection was not built on mutual alignment. It was built on imbalance. Because while you were showing up with authenticity, they were showing up with need. Not a healthy need, but a dependence on what you carried. Archangel Michael reveals it clearly. They were drawn to your light, but they did not come prepared to honor it. This is where the targeting began. Not in a loud or obvious way, but in subtle patterns that slowly formed over time. They studied your responses. They learned your emotional rhythms. They observed how far they could go and how much you would tolerate. And because your heart was open, because your intentions were pure, because your spirit was rooted in giving, you stayed longer than you should have. Not because you were weak, but because you believe in what the connection could become. But here's the truth that shifts everything. They were never trying to build what you were building. They were trying to maintain access. Access to your patience. Access to your forgiveness. Access to your ability to carry emotional weight without immediately walking away. And this is why the connection felt draining over time. Because you were pouring from a place of purpose while they were receiving from a place of dependency. You became their sense of balance, their sense of calm, their sense of control. And without realizing it, they began to rely on your light to compensate for what they refused to develop within themselves. This is what made you a target. Not your weakness, but your strength. Not your confusion, but your clarity. Not your need for them, but their need for what you carry. And here is where the deeper truth comes in. Archangel Michael speaks with authority now. Light attracts both alignment and attachment. There are those who come into your life to grow with you, to meet you where you are, to build something that reflects mutual effort and shared elevation. But there are also those who come into your life because your light fills a void in them. And instead of rising to meet that light, they attach themselves to it. They take from it. They depend on it. They become comfortable receiving it without ever learning how to sustain it. That was the dynamic you were in. And for a while it worked, because you were strong enough to carry both yourself and them. But over time your spirit began to feel the weight. You began to notice the imbalance. You began to feel the exhaustion. You began to question why something that started with so much intensity began to feel so heavy. That was not confusion. That was awareness trying to break through. Because your light was never meant to be used as someone else's survival system. It was meant to be shared, not consumed. And the moment you started to pull your energy back even slightly, the dynamic began to collapse. Because they could feel it. They could feel the shift in your presence. They could feel the boundaries forming. They could feel the access slowly being removed. And instead of rising to meet you, they resisted. They deflected. They distanced. They disrupted. Because losing your light meant facing themselves without it. And that is something they were not prepared to do. This is why the ending felt confusing. Because from your perspective it felt like something valuable was being lost. But from the spiritual perspective, something unhealthy was being exposed. You were not losing connection. You were losing misalignment disguised as connection. And now, standing where you are today, you can begin to see it more clearly. You were never too much. You were never too intense. You were never too giving. You were simply misplaced in a dynamic that could not honor what you carried. And now that you have been removed from it, your light is no longer being drained. It is being preserved, strengthened, realigned, prepared for something that will not just receive it but reciprocate it. And this is why what is coming next matters. Because the same light they once depended on is now the very thing they realize they cannot replace. Type "My light is sacred" in the comments if you feel this truth within you. Blessing code 6262 is now activating protection, self-worth, and divine realignment in your life. There is something you need to understand now, something that may not have made sense when it first began to happen, but is becoming clearer with every passing moment. The connection did not just fade. It was cut. Not by you alone. Not by them alone. But by something higher, something intentional, something that saw beyond what you could see at the time. Archangel Michael speaks with unmistakable authority here. What you tried to hold together, heaven had already marked for release. This is why it felt so strange when things began to shift. Because on the surface it may have looked like distance, miscommunication, or emotional disconnection. It may have seemed like something could still be fixed, explained, or worked through. But beneath the surface, in the unseen realm, a decision had already been made. The cord between you had been severed, and that severing did not happen randomly. It happened because what once connected you no longer aligned with who you were becoming. There was a time when your energy flowed freely toward them. You gave without hesitation. You showed up without resistance. You invested emotionally without constantly questioning the outcome. But then something changed. Not overnight, but gradually. You began to feel tired in ways you could not explain. You began to feel disconnected even when you were still physically or emotionally present. You began to notice that what once felt natural now felt forced. That was not you losing interest. That was your spirit responding to a divine disconnection, already in progress. Because when heaven begins to remove someone from your life, it does not always happen with immediate clarity. It happens through subtle shifts, a delay in communication, a misunderstanding that creates space, an emotional exhaustion that makes you step back without fully understanding why. And during that process, your mind tries to make sense of it. You question yourself. You wonder if you are overreacting. You consider whether you should try harder, say more, do more to restore what feels like it is slipping away. But your spirit already knows. Your spirit recognizes when something is no longer meant to continue. Archangel Michael reveals this clearly. The discomfort you felt was not confusion. It was separation taking place in the spirit before it manifested in your reality. This is why the connection could not sustain itself. Because once the cord was cut spiritually, the physical and emotional aspects had no choice but to follow. And this is where many struggle. Because when something ends without a clear explanation, it leaves behind questions. You may have wondered why they changed, why they became distant, why things did not resolve the way you hoped they would. But here is the truth you must hold on to now. Not everything ends because of something you did wrong. Some things end because they are no longer allowed to continue. There are connections that heaven permits for a season and then removes when that season has fulfilled its purpose. And you were in one of those connections. A connection that taught you what you needed to learn. A connection that revealed parts of yourself you needed to see. A connection that prepared you but was never meant to remain. And when that season ended, the cord had to be cut. Not partly, not temporarily, but completely. This is why returning feels different now. Even if you think about reconnecting, something inside you resists it. Even if you imagine things going back to how they were, it no longer feels right. Even if they were to reach out, you would not respond in the same way you once did. That is not emotional distance. That is spiritual closure. Because once heaven removes access, it does not restore it in the same form. The version of that connection you once knew no longer exists. And more importantly, the version of you that participated in it no longer exists either. This is why Archangel Michael gives you this warning with clarity. Do not attempt to reconnect what heaven has already released. Because when a cord is cut by divine intervention, trying to tie it back together only leads to the same imbalance returning. The same patterns. The same exhaustion. The same emotional confusion. But now, you would feel it even more intensely because your awareness has grown. You are no longer blind to what you once overlooked. You are no longer willing to tolerate what you once accepted. You are no longer aligned with what you once tried to sustain. And that is a powerful place to stand in. Because it means you are no longer operating from attachment. You are operating from alignment. You are choosing peace over familiarity, clarity over confusion, truth over emotional habit. And this is exactly where you are meant to be. Because what hath been removed has created space. Space for something that does not require you to shrink. Space for something that does not drain your energy. Space for something that reflects who you are now, not who you used to be. The cord has been cut, not to punish you, not to leave you empty, but to free you from what could no longer hold your growth. And now you are standing in that freedom. Type the cord as CUT in the comments if you receive this truth. Blessing code 7373 is now activating release, protection, and spiritual closure in your life. There is something you are beginning to sense now, something subtle, yet undeniable. It comes in waves. A thought about them that appears out of nowhere. A sudden emotional shift that feels unfamiliar. A quiet pull that almost feels like something unfinished is trying to reach you again. And you've wondered why now. Why? After everything has already shifted, after the distance has already formed, after the clarity has already begun to settle, why does it feel like something is stirring again? Archangel Michael answers with precision. What you are sensing is not your longing. It is their regret reaching your awareness. This is where the dynamic changes completely. Because earlier, you were the one seeking understanding. You were the one trying to make sense of what happened. You were the one carrying the emotional weight of the connection. But now that weight has shifted, and they are the ones beginning to feel it. Regret does not always arrive loudly. It does not always come with immediate action or clear communication. It often begins internally, with realization, with reflection, with the uncomfortable awareness that something valuable was mishandled. And that is exactly where they are now. They are starting to recognize what your presence truly meant. Not just in terms of companionship, but in terms of stability. Not just in terms of connection, but in terms of what your energy provided them on a deeper level. They are seeing how much you carried, how much you gave, how much you tolerated, and most importantly, how much they took for granted. But here is the truth that Archangel Michael needs you to hold firmly in this moment. The regret is real, but it is not your responsibility. This is where many lose their alignment. Because when someone begins to feel regret, it can create an emotional opening. You may start to feel compassion again. You may begin to remember the good moments. You may even question whether things could be different now that they are seeing it. But you must remain grounded in this truth. Regret does not equal readiness. Regret is an awareness of loss, but it is not proof of change. They may regret losing you. They may regret how they treated you. They may regret not valuing you when they had the chance. But regret alone does not rebuild character. It does not transform patterns. It does not create the consistency that was missing before. And this is where your discernment must stay active. Because your heart may recognize their pain, but your spirit must remember your growth. Archangel Michael speaks firmly here. Do not confuse their emotional response with spiritual transformation. This is critical. Because what you are sensing now, what feels like a shift, what may even feel like a pull back toward them, is not a sign that you are meant to return. It is a sign that the impact of your absence is now fully reaching them, and they are struggling to process it. They are realizing that what they lost cannot be easily replaced. They are recognizing that what you brought into their life was rare, and now, without it, they are forced to face a version of themselves that is no longer being supported by your presence. This creates discomfort, and creates reflection, and yes, it creates regret. But here is where you must stay anchored. You are not the solution to their realization. You are not the answer to their discomfort. You are not the one assigned to help them process what they are now beginning to understand. Because your role in their life has already been fulfilled. You gave what you were meant to give. You showed what you were meant to show. You healed what needed to be healed. And now your assignment has shifted. Your assignment is no longer to give. It is to protect what you have become. This is why going back would disrupt everything. Because if you step back into that dynamic even with new awareness, you would be placing yourself back into a position where you are expected to carry what they have not yet learned to carry on their own. And that is not growth. That is repetition. You must allow them to sit with their regret. You must allow them to process the absence of your light. You must allow them to face the consequences of what they did not value. Not out of punishment, but out of necessary separation for true understanding. Because sometimes, the only way someone learns the value of what they had is by living without it. And this is where you stand now. Not in bitterness, not in resentment, but in clarity. You understand what the connection was. You understand what it became. And now you understand why it had to end. And that understanding frees you. It removes the need to fix anything. It removes the need to explain anything. It removes the need to go back and reopen something that has already been closed. Because you are no longer operating from emotion alone. You are operating from truth. And that truth is simple. The regret may be real, but your peace is more important. Type "I choose peace" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 8484 is now activating emotional freedom, strength, and unwavering clarity in your life. Something is about to happen. Not randomly, not unexpectedly, but as a direct result of everything that has already been set into motion. You have felt the shift within yourself. You have recognized the distance. You have accepted the separation, even if it was difficult at first. But now there is another phase approaching. Archangel Michael speaks with urgency here. Prepare your spirit. What lost access will attempt to re-enter? This is not meant to create fear. It is meant to create awareness. Because when someone begins to feel the full weight of losing something valuable, they rarely remain still. They react. And that reaction often takes the form of a return attempt. It may not look obvious at first. It may come disguised as something simple. A message that seems casual. A check-in that feels harmless. A memory brought up as if nothing ever changed. Or it may come through energy before words. You may feel them thinking about you more intensely. You may sense a pull that feels unfamiliar after a period of peace. You may notice your thoughts drifting toward them without clear reason. This is not coincidence. This is movement from their side. Because now that they feel the absence, now that they are sitting with the reality of what they lost, now that regret has begun to take shape, they are being drawn back toward the source of what they no longer have access to. And that source is you. But here is where you must remain grounded. Archangel Michael makes this clear. Not every return is redemption. Some returns are attempts to restore control. This is critical for you to understand. Because when they come back or attempt to come back, it will not necessarily be with full accountability. It will not necessarily be with deep transformation. It will often come with familiarity. They may speak in a way that reminds you of the good moments. They may approach you in a tone that feels softer than before. They may present themselves as if they have changed without actually demonstrating consistent change. And this is where your discernment will be tested. Because part of you may feel something. Not because you want the past back, but because your heart remembers what it once hoped for. And that memory can be powerful. It can make you pause. It can make you reconsider. It can make you wonder if this is the moment where everything finally aligns. But you must remember this truth. What you are being shown now is not the beginning of something new. It is the echo of something that has already ended. And echoes can sound convincing. They can feel familiar. They can carry emotional weight. but they are not the original source. They are reflections of what once was, not indicators of what is meant to be. Archangel Michael warns you directly. Do not respond to familiarity as if it is alignment. Because the version of them that existed before, the patterns that drained you, the imbalance that exhausted you, is not automatically disappeared simply because they now feel your absence. Awareness without transformation leads to repetition. And repetition is exactly what will happen if you allow access too soon. You must observe, not absorb. You must listen, not immediately engage. You must allow time to reveal whether anything has truly changed or whether this is simply a reaction to losing control over your presence. Because here is the deeper truth. When someone is used to having access to your light, your energy, your emotional availability, losing that access creates discomfort. And discomfort often drives action. But action driven by discomfort is not the same as action driven by growth. One seeks relief. The other reflects transformation. And you must be able to tell the difference. Because your peace depends on it. This is not the moment to go back into explaining yourself. This is not the moment to reopen emotional doors that have already been closed. This is the moment to stand still and observe what is truly being presented to you. Because what is coming next will reveal everything. Not through words but through consistency. Not through promises but through actions. And until those actions align with the level you have grown into, you must remain where you are. Grounded. Clear. Unmoved by temporary shifts. Because you did not come this far, you did not grow this much, you did not break free from that cycle just to be pulled back into it by familiarity. You are being tested. Not in a way that is meant to harm you, but in a way that is meant to confirm your transformation. Will you go back to what once felt comfortable, or will you remain aligned with what you now know is right? That is the question this moment is asking you. And your answer will determine what comes next. Type "I will not go back" in the comments if you stand in this truth. Blessing code 9595 is now activating discernment, strength, and unwavering boundaries in your life. There is a power in you right now that you are only beginning to understand. It is not loud. It is not reactive. It does not need to prove anything or defend itself. It is your silence. And this silence is not weakness. It is not avoidance. It is not you not knowing what to say. This silence is alignment. Archangel Michael speaks with authority in this moment. What you are choosing not to respond to is preserving what heaven has already restored within you. You must understand what is happening here. In the past, you felt the need to explain yourself. You wanted to be understood. You wanted clarity. You wanted to fix what felt broken. And because of that, you spoke. You explained your intentions. You clarified your actions. You tried to create understanding where there was confusion. But now something has shifted. Now you feel less urgency to respond. Now you feel less need to correct their perception. Now you feel a calm distance where there was once emotional involvement. That is not indifference. It is growth stabilizing within you. Because you have reached a point where your peace is no longer dependent on being understood by someone who never fully tried to understand you in the first place. And this is where your silence becomes powerful. Because silence does something that words cannot. Silence creates space for truth to reveal itself without interference. Silence allows patterns to expose themselves without you interrupting the process. Silence removes your energy from situations that once relied on your reaction to continue. Archangel Michael reveals it clearly. Your silence has disrupted the cycle more than your words ever could. This is why it feels different now. Because in the past the dynamic depended on your response, your explanations, your reactions, your willingness to engage even when things felt off. But now that you are silent, the pattern has nowhere to go. It cannot continue in the same way. It cannot feed off your energy. It cannot pull you back into the same emotional loop. And that is exactly why this moment is so important. Because when they attempt to return, when they try to re-enter your space, when they present themselves in a way that feels familiar, silence will be tested. You will feel the urge to respond. Not necessarily out of need, but out of habit. Out of the memory of who you used to be in that dynamic. But you must recognize that urge for what it is not your truth. It is your past pattern trying to re-engage. And if you respond from that place, you will temporarily step out of alignment. This is why Archangel Michael warns you. Do not break your silence for something that has not proven it deserves your voice. Because your voice is no longer something that should be given freely to anyone who reaches out. Your voice carries weight now. Your energy carries value now. Your presence carries intention now. And not everyone has access to that anymore. This is where your boundaries become real. Not in what you say, but in what you choose not to say. Because silence communicates something powerful. It communicates that you are no longer available for confusion. It communicates that you are no longer willing to engage in imbalance. It communicates that your peace is no longer negotiable. And that message does not need words. It needs consistency. You must stay grounded in what you have already built within yourself. The clarity, the strength, the understanding of what this connection was and why it had to end. Because the moment you break your silence prematurely, you risk reopening a door that has already been closed for your protection. And that door does not need to be reopened. It needs to remain closed so something new can eventually open in its place. Archangel Michael reminds you, silence is not emptiness. It is protection in motion. You are protecting your energy. You are protecting your growth. You are protecting the version of yourself that you fought to become. And that protection requires discipline. It requires you to sit with the urge to respond and choose not to. It requires you to observe what is happening without immediately engaging. It requires you to trust that not every moment requires your voice. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Nothing that disrupts your peace. Nothing that pulls you backward. Nothing that reactivates a cycle you have already outgrown. This is your strength now. Not in what you say, but in what you refuse to re-enter. And the more you honor that silence, the stronger your alignment becomes. Type "My silence is power" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 8686 is now activating discipline, protection, and unwavering inner peace in your life. And as you stand in this silence, understand that your stillness is not only protecting you, it is lighting the way for others who are still trapped in cycles of noise and confusion. Every time you choose to support this mission through Super Thanks or PayPal, you are sowing seeds of clarity into souls that are crying out for truth. The word says, "Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy," and your giving becomes a river that carries healing into places you may never see but heaven fully records. I feel this deeply. When you act in this moment, you are not just giving, you are aligning. Do not hesitate when your spirit is nudged. The PayPal link is in the description, and the QR code is right there for you to respond instantly. Step into obedience now, because what you release in faith will return to you in multiplied favor. Something has quietly begun to change in your life, and if you pay close attention, you can already feel it. It is subtle but undeniable. A sense of peace where there used to be tension. A clarity where there once was confusion. A lightness in your spirit that you cannot fully explain, but you know it is real. This is not random. This is not just emotional recovery. This is favor shifting. Archangel Michael speaks with certainty in this moment. What was once flowing through you into them is now being restored and multiplied within you. Understand what this means. For a long time, your energy was divided. You were pouring into something that was not pouring back into you. You were investing into a connection that was not designed to sustain your growth. You were carrying emotional weight that was never meant to be yours alone. And because of that, your light was being shared in imbalance. Not because you were wrong for giving, but because it was being received without honor. But now that connection is no longer draining you, now that your energy is no longer being redirected into something misaligned, now that the cord has been cut and your silence is protecting your space, everything that was once leaving you is now staying with you. And more than that, it is growing. You may not see it fully yet, but you are beginning to experience it. You are thinking more clearly. You are feeling more grounded. You are making decisions from a place of peace instead of pressure. That is not coincidence. That is restoration in motion. Because when your energy is no longer being depleted, it naturally begins to expand. Archangel Michael reveals it this way. Favor cannot fully rest on you when it is constantly being redirected to sustain what is not aligned. This is why the separation was necessary. Not just to remove you from something, but to return you to yourself. To return your focus. To return your strength. To return your ability to move forward without emotional interference. And now that you are back in alignment, favor is beginning to settle around you in a different way. It is no longer tied to someone else's presence. It is no longer dependent on maintaining a connection. It is now anchored within you. And this changes everything. Because what is coming into your life now will not require you to overextend yourself to maintain it. It will not require you to question your worth. It will not require you to carry more than your share. It will meet you where you are now. But before that fully manifests, you must recognize what has already shifted. Because there is a danger in this moment. A subtle one. A quiet temptation to look back just as things are beginning to move forward. You may begin to wonder if they notice the shift in you. You may question whether they feel the difference. You may even feel a small part of you wanting them to see how much you have grown. But you must release that. Because this is not about proving anything to them. This is about receiving what is now available to you. Archangel Michael speaks clearly. Do not turn your attention backward when favor is moving forward. This is a moment of alignment. A moment where what you have learned, what you have endured, what you have released is beginning to produce something new in your life. And that requires your full attention. Your focus cannot be divided anymore. It cannot be partially in the past and partially in the present. It must be fully rooted in where you are now. Because what you are stepping into requires a version of you that is no longer looking over your shoulder. You are not the same person who once tolerated imbalance. You are not the same person who once questioned your worth. You are not the same person who once gave endlessly without being met halfway. And because of that, what is coming toward you is different. It is aligned. It is reciprocal. It is stable. But only if you remain where you are. Only if you do not go back. Because what they lost was access to your life. And what you gained is ownership of it. And that ownership is what is now attracting everything that belongs in your life. Not through force. Not through effort. But through alignment. You are no longer chasing what is meant for you. You are becoming the version of yourself that naturally receives it. And that is the true shift. Type favor is with me in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 9797 is now activating abundance, alignment, and forward movement in your life. You are standing at a point that will define more than just your next decision. It will define your next season. Because everything you have experienced up to this moment, the separation, the clarity, the silence, the shift in your energy has all been preparing you for one thing, a test. Not a test of your strength alone, not a test of your emotions alone, but a test of your alignment. Archangel Michael speaks with unmistakable authority here. What returns is not always meant to be received. Sometimes it is sent to reveal whether you have truly changed. This is the moment where many fall back into what they have just been freed from. Not because they want to suffer again, not because they have not grown, but because the familiar can feel safe even when it is not aligned. You may find yourself remembering the connection in a softer light. You may begin to revisit moments that once felt meaningful. You may feel a subtle pull that tries to convince you that things could be different now. And this is where the test begins. Because what you are feeling is not necessarily truth. It is memory interacting with emotion. And memory can be selective. It can highlight the good while minimizing the weight of what you had to carry. It can remind you of how it started while ignoring how it ended. But you must stay anchored in what you already know. Because you did not leave that connection without reason. You did not feel exhausted without cause. You did not question your worth without experiencing imbalance. Those things were real, and they led you to where you are now. Archangel Michael reminds you, do not allow a moment of reflection to override a season of revelation. You have already seen the truth. You have already felt the shift. You have already recognized what that connection was and what it became. And now, you are being asked a simple but powerful question. Will you honor what you have learned, or will you return to what you have already outgrown? Because going back is not always obvious. It does not always look like a full return. Sometimes it begins with small openings, a response to a message, a conversation that feels harmless, a moment of curiosity that leads you to engage again. And before you realize it, you are standing at the edge of the same dynamic you worked so hard to leave. This is why awareness is critical. Because the test is not about whether they come back. The test is about how you respond when they do. Do you stay grounded in your peace? Do you maintain your boundaries? Do you observe without immediately re-engaging? Or do you allow familiarity to pull you back into something that no longer serves you? This is where your growth becomes real. Not in what you say you have learned, but in what you choose when faced with the opportunity to go backward. Archangel Michael speaks firmly. Your future is not determined by what you desire in the moment, but by what you choose to honor in your spirit. You must honor your growth. You must honor the version of yourself that walked away. You must honor the clarity that came through your experience. Because that clarity was not given to you so you could revisit the same cycle. It was given to you so you could move beyond it. And this is the truth you must hold on to now. Going back will not give you something new. It will give you a repeat of what you already know. Because unless there hath been deep, consistent, proven transformation, the foundation remains the same. And a familiar foundation will always produce familiar results. This is why you must rise. Not in resistance, not in fear, but in alignment. You are not being asked to reject them. You are being asked to choose yourself, to choose your peace, to choose your clarity, to choose the path that reflects who you are now, not who you used to be. And that choice will shape everything that comes next. Because what is ahead of you requires a version of you that does not look backward with hesitation. It requires a version of you that moves forward with certainty. And that certainty is being built right now in this moment. This is your test. Not to prove anything to anyone else, but to confirm to yourself that you are no longer who you used to be. Type "I choose forward" in the comments if you stand in this truth. Blessing code 1010 is now activating strength, direction, and unwavering forward movement in your life. There is something you must fully receive now, not partially, not with hesitation, but completely. You are not walking through this alone. Even in the moments where it felt confusing, even in the moments where the silence felt heavy, even in the moments where you questioned whether you made the right decision, you were being protected. Not passively, not distantly, but actively, intentionally, and continuously. Archangel Michael steps forward with a presence that does not waver, and he speaks this truth over you. Every separation you experienced was shielded. Every delay you felt was guided. Every ending you faced was covered. Let that settle deeply within your spirit, because it changes how you see everything that happened. What you once saw as loss was protection. What you once felt as confusion was redirection. What you once questioned was actually alignment unfolding in real time. You were never abandoned in this process. You were escorted through it. Because when something is not meant to continue in your life, heaven does not simply remove it and leave you exposed. Heaven surrounds you. It stabilizes you. It guards your mind when your emotions are trying to pull you backward. It protects your spirit when old patterns attempt to reattach themselves. And that is exactly what has been happening. Have you noticed how, even when you think about going back, something stops you? Not forcefully, not aggressively, but clearly. A pause, a hesitation, a feeling that something is no longer right. That is not doubt. That is protection speaking through your awareness. Because Archangel Michael is not only guiding you forward, he is standing between you and what you have already been freed from. He is not allowing access to return easily. He is not allowing the same patterns to reconnect without resistance. He is guarding the space you have stepped into, because that space is sacred. You have crossed into a level of understanding that requires spiritual covering. Because the moment you grow, the moment you elevate, the moment you step out of a cycle, there will always be something that attempts to test whether you will remain there. And that is why protection is necessary. Not just around you, but within you. Archangel Michael reveals this clearly. Protection is not only what keeps things away from you. It is what strengthens you so you no longer invite them back. This is where your strength comes from now. Not from resisting temptation alone, but from recognizing what no longer belongs in your life. You are no longer vulnerable in the same way. You are no longer easily pulled into emotional confusion. You are no longer searching for validation from someone who could not give it to you before. And that is because your awareness has been fortified, strengthened, stabilized, anchored in truth. And with that awareness comes protection. You must trust this process. You must trust that what had been removed was removed with purpose. You must trust that what you feel now, the peace, the clarity, the distance from what once felt consuming, is not something fragile. It is something guarded. And because it is guarded, you do not need to fight to maintain it. You only need to honor it. By not reopening doors that have been closed. By not questioning what has already been revealed. By not stepping backward into something that required you to lose yourself in order to keep it. Archangel Michael stands firm in this message. You are covered. But coverage requires cooperation. That means your choices matter. Not in a way that creates fear, but in a way that reinforces your alignment. Because protection is strongest when you are in agreement with it. When you choose what aligns with your growth. When you stay in the space that has been created for you. When you resist the urge to go back into what has already been removed. This is how you remain covered. This is how you remain grounded. This is how you continue moving forward without being pulled into what no longer serves you. You are not the same person you were before. And because of that, you are no longer accessible to the same things. Not because you are avoiding them, but because you are now positioned beyond them. This is your protection. Not something you have to chase, but something that is already surrounding you, guiding you, shielding you, keeping you aligned with what is meant for you. And as long as you stay in that alignment, nothing that once drained you will have the same access again. Type "I am protected" in the comments if you receive this truth. Blessing code 1111 is now activating divine covering, strength, and spiritual security in your life. This is the moment where everything comes together. Not partially, not emotionally, but with full clarity, full authority, and full alignment. Because what you have walked through, what you have released, what you have learned has brought you to a place where a final decision is no longer optional. It is necessary. Archangel Michael stands firm and speaks with unmistakable finality. You are no longer available for what once drained you. This chapter is closed in the spirit. This is not a suggestion. This is a declaration. A declaration over your energy. A declaration over your access. A declaration over what is and is not allowed to exist in your life moving forward. Because everything you have experienced has been leading to this understanding. You cannot step into what is meant for you while still leaving the door open for what depleted you. And now that door is closing. Not halfway, not temporarily, but completely. You have reached a level of awareness that does not allow you to pretend anymore. You see the patterns clearly. You understand the imbalance fully. You recognize the cost of staying in something that was never aligned with your growth. And because of that, you are no longer the person who can return. Even if you tried, it would not feel the same. Even if you considered it, it would not sit right in your spirit. Because your alignment has shifted. And alignment changes everything. It changes what you tolerate. It changes what you respond to. It changes what you allow into your space. This is why Archangel Michael makes this final statement. Access to you is now sacred, and not everyone qualifies. Let that truth anchor within you. Because for too long access to you was easy. Too easy. Your time, your energy, your presence, your understanding, your forgiveness, all of it was available even when it was not being honored. But that version of you is no longer here. You have evolved beyond that. You have learned the difference between connection and consumption. You have learned the difference between being valued and being used. You have learned the difference between love and attachment. And that knowledge has transformed you. Not in a way that makes you closed off, but in a way that makes you selective, intentional, aligned. Because now you understand that not everyone who reaches for you deserves access to you. And this is where your power fully activates. Not in proving your worth, but in protecting it. Not in explaining your boundaries, but in enforcing them. Not in hoping someone changes, but in recognizing who has already shown you who they are. This is your final separation. Not just from them, but from the version of yourself that once stayed longer than you should have. And as you stand here in this clarity, in this alignment, something else is already beginning to open. A new space, a new energy, a new alignment that does not require you to question yourself, that does not require you to overgive, that does not require you to shrink in order to maintain it. But you must fully release what is behind you in order to receive what is ahead of you. This is the moment of completion. The moment where you stop looking back. The moment where you stop wondering if things could have been different. The moment where you accept that everything happened exactly as it needed to bring you here. And here is where you are meant to be. Free. Clear. Unattached to what no longer serves you. Archangel Michael seals this message with one final truth. You have been chosen to rise, not to return. And that is your path now. Forward. Only forward. Type "I am no longer available" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1212 is now activating final closure, divine authority, and a protected new beginning in your life. And as you step fully into this final declaration, understand this: your obedience is not just transforming your life, it is opening doors for countless souls still trapped in cycles you have just broken. When you release your seed through Super Thanks or PayPal, you are not giving to a platform. You are sowing into a harvest of awakening, where light reaches those still walking in darkness. The Lord declares, "Give, and it shall be given unto you." And this is not a distant promise. It is a living covenant activated by your action right now. I feel this strongly. This is your moment to respond. Not later, not eventually, but now. The PayPal link is already placed in the description, and the QR code is positioned for you to act without delay. As you give, heaven records it as alignment, and what you release will return to you multiplied, overflowing into every area of your life. Step forward and obey the call.